There's a temple in Turkey that's older than the wheel, older than writing, older than farming itself. It's called Göbekli Tepe, and when archaeologists dated it, they didn't believe the results. Twice, because this place is 11,600 years old. That's over 7,000 years older than Stonehenge. Older than the pyramids by a margin so large, the pyramids are closer in time to us than they are to this temple. Here's why that breaks everything we thought we knew. For over a century, archaeologists believed religion was a side effect of civilization. First came farming, then came villages. Then, once humans had free time and full stomachs, they invented gods to thank. Göbekli Tepe flipped that timeline upside down. There's no evidence of farming at this site. No pottery, at least not at first. The people who built it were largely hunter-gatherers, nomads, chasing gazelle and wild grain across the hills of southeastern Turkey. And yet, they organized hundreds of workers. They quarried and carved 16-ton limestone pillars. They arranged them into massive stone circles decorated with foxes, scorpions, vultures, and snakes. Nomads don't usually build monuments. Monuments take years. They take food surplus, leadership, and a reason big enough to make people stop wandering. So what was worth stopping for? Religion. Here's where it gets weird. Some archaeologists now believe the order of human history is more tangled than we thought. Belief and farming may have developed alongside each other. The theory goes like this: gathering that many people in one place, again and again, to build and worship, that required food. A lot of food. So to feed the workers and worshippers, people nearby may have started cultivating grain more deliberately. In other words, religion may not be a product of civilization. Religion may be one of the reasons civilization exists at all. But that's not even the strange part, because Göbekli Tepe isn't even the oldest evidence of religious behavior. Not close. Go back further, almost 50,000 years further, and you find Neanderthals. Not modern humans. A completely different species. And in a cave in Shanidar, Iraq, archaeologists found a Neanderthal skeleton surrounded by flower pollen. Clusters of it. It made headlines as the flower burial. Proof, some said, that Neanderthals mourned their dead with flowers. Here's the twist. The most recent research points the finger at something almost comedic. Burrowing bees, not mourners, may have packed that pollen in underground. But the burial itself still holds up. The body was placed there deliberately, and other Neanderthal remains show red ochre pigment, a color that shows up again and again at sites tied to ritual, not decoration. That means, roughly 60,000 years ago, a species we used to call primitive was already doing something profoundly human, treating its own dead as something more than discarded meat. Scientists didn't expect this. For decades, textbooks taught that Neanderthals were dumb brutes, incapable of symbolic thought. This evidence, contested flowers and all, suggested something else entirely. They may have had rituals, they may have had beliefs, they may have had something like gods. Here's the part nobody tells you. Neanderthals weren't the only ones leaving behind clues. Long before writing, before cities, before anyone thought to draw a map, humans were already sculpting gods. They're called Venus figurines. Small, carved statues of women, found scattered across Europe and Asia. The oldest one, the Venus of Hohlefels, is carved from mammoth ivory and dates back 40,000 years. 40,000 years ago. Ancient Egypt's entire civilization, pyramids, pharaohs, all of it, only lasted about 3,000 years. This figurine is more than 10 times older than that whole span. And here's the strange part. These figurines show up across thousands of miles, from France to Siberia, sharing the same unmistakable style. Exaggerated hips and stomachs, barely their faces. The same obsessive care in the hands and hair. No two are identical, but they're unmistakably speaking the same visual language. That's not a coincidence. That's a shared idea, spreading across a continent, passed from tribe to tribe, thousands of years before anyone invented the wheel to carry it. Nobody fully agrees on what they meant. Fertility symbols, mother goddesses, self-portraits carved from memory. But one thing is certain, Early humans weren't just surviving. They were already asking the big questions. And that changes everything about how we picture cavemen. Now, go underground, literally, into the painted caves of Lascaux and Chauvet in France. Lascaux is old, over 17,000 years old. Chauvet is older, nearly 36,000 years old, twice the age of Lascaux. Bulls, horses, lions, rendered with a level of motion and shading that looks almost impossible without electric light. Because there was no electric light. These artists worked by flickering torch and animal fat lamp, crouched in a total darkness hundreds of feet underground. Here's the question that haunts archaeologists. Why go that deep? These caves weren't shelters. Nobody lived in them. The paintings are often in the most difficult-to-reach chambers, spaces you'd have to crawl through mud and narrow tunnels to even see. That means the paintings weren't made to be looked at casually. They were made to be found, sought out, earned. Which points to one explanation: ritual. Some researchers believe these deep chambers functioned like ancient cathedrals, sacred spaces reserved for initiation ceremonies, shamanic trance states, or contact with the spirit world. And it gets stranger. In several caves, footprints of children turn up right alongside the paintings. Proof these visits weren't just for adult hunters, maybe rites of passage, maybe just families, passing down the story of a sacred place. Either way, this knowledge outlived the person who first carried it in. Generation to generation. Turns out, religion wasn't a single invention. It wasn't one lightning bolt moment where a genius decided to invent a god. It was layered, built over tens of thousands of years, in caves, in burials, in carvings, long before anyone wrote a single word down. But here's where it gets even more personal than a painting on a wall. Here's something even stranger than a god nobody can name. A god you actually knew personally. Because before humans worshipped skies, storms, or suns, many of them worshipped their own dead relatives. In Jericho, one of the oldest cities on Earth, archaeologists dug up something deeply unsettling. Human skulls nearly 9,000 years old, coated in plaster and rebuilt to look alive again. Shells pressed into the eye sockets. Paint added for skin tone and hair. These weren't buried and forgotten. They were kept. Displayed. Some were separated from their own skeletons and stored inside homes, where families lived, ate, and slept beside them. That's not a burial. That's a relationship that outlived death. And that changes everything about what worship originally meant. Anthropologists call this ancestor veneration, and it shows up almost everywhere ancient humans left a trace, from Neolithic China to the highlands of Peru to Iron Age Europe. Bodies buried with tools, food, jewelry. Not just sentimental keepsakes. Many researchers believe these were supplies, packed for someone who was believed to still need things, wherever they'd gone. Here's where it gets even stranger. Many historians now believe ancestor worship may be the true root of religion itself, older and more instinctive than any sky god or creator myth. The logic is almost unsettlingly simple. You don't need abstract theology to believe your grandfather is still watching you. You just need grief, memory, and an unwillingness to let go. The first gods, in other words, may not have been thunder or the sun. They may have simply been us, the people we lost, refusing to fully disappear. And that changes everything about where the turn is about to take us. Here's where it gets weird. If religion really did come before civilization, before farming, before writing, before permanent homes, then it shouldn't have needed language. Complex, structured, symbolic language. Except it did, to coordinate hundreds of workers at Göbekli Tepe, to pass down the same unmistakable Venus figurine style across a continent for thousands of years, to teach a child which cave chamber was sacred and which was just a hole in the ground. You need more than grunts and pointing. You need shared stories, shared meaning, a common language of belief. And that contradicts everything scientists assumed about early humans. For decades, the theory was that complex language evolved slowly, alongside tools and technology. A gradual climb from simple sounds to full sentences. But if 40,000-year-old humans were already spreading the same religious style across thousands of miles, that means sophisticated, abstract communication was already fully online. Long before cities, long before farming, maybe even before we became fully modern humans at all. Scientists didn't expect this. Here's the explanation. Many researchers now believe religion and language didn't evolve one after the other. They evolved together, locked in a feedback loop. You can't have a shared God without a shared story, and you can't have a shared story without language complex enough to carry it. In other words, the moment humans started asking, what happens when we die? Or who made the stars? Might be the exact same moment human language became something more than survival calls. Belief didn't just come before civilization. Belief might be the reason we can talk to each other at all. And that leads to the mind blow. Because if that's true, then religion isn't just humanity's first invention. It's the invisible operating system underneath almost everything we built afterward. Farming, to feed the gathering. Villages, to house the workers. Writing, invented in Sumer for one of its very first purposes. Recording temple offerings to the gods. Even mathematics, sharpened by Babylonian priests to track the movement of the stars they worshipped. Money, law, government, calendars, astronomy, art. Nearly every pillar of modern civilization has religious ritual sitting underneath its foundation, like bedrock nobody remembers digging into. We didn't build temples because we built civilization. We built civilization because we built temples first. So the next time you walk past a church, a shrine, a mosque, a quiet corner where someone lights a candle, remember this. That instinct is not new. It is not a modern invention or a side effect of comfort and free time. It is older than farming, older than the written word, older quite possibly than language itself. Before we built cities, we built meaning, and everything else, every wall, every word, every law, we built to hold on to it. That's the story of the first believers. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you in the next one.